Hello, and welcome to Monumental, where we sit down with entrepreneurs, leaders, visionaries, and big thinkers making monumental change. Here's your host, Evan Holiday.
Welcome to Monumental. I'm your host, Evan Holiday, and today I am honored to have on the show with us the Honorable Nancy VanReece. Nancy, how you doing?
I'm okay. It's cold, but I'm okay.
Yes. So Nancy has been a good friend of mine for quite a few years now. I think it's 4 or 5 years now we've known each other, working here in Nashville, working to provide affordable housing. And so a little quick background on Nancy before we get started. Nancy is in her second term as council member for District 8 in the Metro Nashville-Davidson County government. That's a mouthful. But is the first openly lesbian elected to a legislative body in the state of Tennessee. As well as serving her city, she is the VP of Business Development at Batch Nashville, where they provide curated gift batches. She is also an at-large board member of the National League of Cities Elected Officials Constituency Group and is active with the Victory Institute. She's also a trailblazer for more than 25 years in the music business before everything she's doing now.
That's true.
And you said that your mission is to advocate creative opportunities to help communities, businesses, and individuals achieve their full potential. And that's why I knew we had to have her on Monumental. So, on top of all that, and like we talked about, a pleasure of working with you over the years. I really enjoyed our time together and making affordable workforce housing happen in your district. But with that, let's give you an opportunity to give the background on yourself to our listeners.
Sure. Well, I moved to Nashville in '86. It was because I had started a marketing business in the music realm out of college in Texas. And having grown up in Oklahoma, the idea of moving to a coastal city was a little overwhelming. So the third coast, as we like to call it in the 80s, was Nashville. So I ended up in Nashville in the mid 80s. So that's what brought me to town. There has been a number of different things, I think, that kind of made me decide to do whatever it is that I'm doing. That personal mission statement of helping others achieve their potential came from living with a family that had that as a matter of philosophy. It was in the water where I grew up. In 1968, when I was 4 years old, I heard a rock thrown through the window of my home in the middle of the night.
Wow.
My memory of it has been enhanced by conversations with other family members, but I do remember that waking up and hearing my mother run down the hallway with what I later learned was not fear, but a sense of potential in protecting potential, if you will. And so later that morning, the day after, my dad sat my brother and I down to explain what had happened. It was 1968. Martin Luther King Jr. had been killed. My father had lowered the flag to half-staff in our yard, and someone had thrown a rock through our window.
Wow.
So in the formidable age of 4, when a lot of kids are sort of deciding who they're going to be, regardless of their opportunity to understand that that's what's happening. It instilled a sense of obligation to me to protect potential, and the public service and the ability to have a witness of an example to stand for what mattered to my father kind of led me into the kind of personality that I have. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, so I was the baby and easily influenced, I'm sure. But having done enough soul searching as to why I do what I do and the passion behind it. It goes back to that moment.
Yeah.
And we're talking to each other on Martin Luther King Jr. Weekend, and so it came to mind. I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, I love that. And what was that conversation like with your parents and you and your brothers and sisters?
Well, like I said, I mean, I wasn't even in kindergarten yet, right? So all I can speak of is the feeling that I felt safe, that I felt proud, and I understood somehow, even at that young age, that it wasn't something to be afraid of. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And like you said, protecting potential.
Yeah.
And then that is part of your mission statement now of helping people realize their full potential.
Yeah, I think that regardless of what industry you're in, that if you have somewhere along the line of how you measure success being how you've helped others achieve their potential, that's a good life. Yeah.
So walk us through from that moment going forward, how you got to Nashville and to today.
It's interesting because I have had a number of different sort of careers, but with the same sort of mission in mind in each industry type, if you will, right? So in business, in the music business, in arts nonprofits, and now in government, and in just basic sales and client acquisition and retention that we do at Batch. That's batchusa.com. Yeah. That all of that kind of speaks to it. Even, I mean, actually, even the work we do at Batch, we curate handcrafted local items made by other small businesses, right?
Yeah.
So when you get a gift from Batch and there's 4 items in it, you've helped 5 small businesses achieve their potential, right? So helping small entrepreneurs grow has always been kind of part of my DNA. In the music business, I worked in the contemporary Christian music business and jazz and children's music, kind of niche markets, if you will, and helped with radio promotion and marketing. That eventually led to music management and publishing. I'm still, even to this day, trying to make sure that the things that I work on help more than just me. So, yeah.
And I think that shines true in all of your work that you're doing today, and being so involved in your community, being a leader of your community, being a connector in your community. And has that kind of been your motive throughout the music, the arts, the social media, the communications, everything that you've been doing?
Yeah, I think that there are different kinds of people that have strengths, and if you're building a team, you have all those types of people on your team, and that could be the closer, the person that rallies the team, the person that can manage conflict, and the bridge builder. And that's been sort of my part on the team, is making sure that whenever there is potential actually focused on, that you build that team to make sure that it accomplishes itself. So I think I kind of naturally fell into that. It's interesting, I've talked to a lot of other electeds from across the country that sort of have that same sorts of trait. What you don't want is a team of only those types of people, because then nothing really happens. You just keep building bridges to nowhere.
Yeah. So how did you get to that point of knowing that that's what you were good at?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that you're always learning, and I don't know that you have a moment where you say, hey, man, I'm really good at that. I should do more of that. I think that you're more apt to recognize what you need to work on than what's already working, right? And so I think that I wouldn't say that I'm in a position to say that I've achieved everything that I want to do in that regard. There are a lot of things to learn about diplomacy and about the execution of a long sail, right? I was like, talk about a long sail. We did a long sail. But there's some people they can't stand it. They can't stand the idea of a great idea that everybody loves, that is fully funded, is still 18 months from a shovel. They can't stand that. They would just rather do something that I can say is done on Monday. And so it does take some patience. And I didn't realize I had built that sort of patience in the music business that applies now to housing, or zoning, but that sort of ability to be okay with things taking a long time. It's sort of a young person's game. So as I get older, I'm like, y'all need to do this. I'd kind of like to see it, Well,
it's amazing because it seems like also a little bit of the opposite on the younger side. Like people are like, why don't we have it now? Now. And the age of immediate gratification on the phone, it's like click, click, click.
Sure.
And I think there are a lot of people that haven't developed that or haven't put enough thought into how do I actually get better at being patient and investing time and energy into something for the long term.
That's right.
And doing exactly what you're doing in the council. The projects you're working on in the council take years. I mean, the one we worked on took about 3 years from start to actual just breaking ground, and they're still under construction.
Yeah. It'll be another year before somebody actually lives there,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Lord willing and the creek don't rise. And it's and I think that too. I mean, there comes when I'm learning now in my fifth year as an elected. There comes a time where patience is at its end. And you try to address that with the same personality and graciousness as you did being patient. There's been a couple of projects that just get ground to a halt because of red tape, that you have to go in and say it's no longer appropriate for this to keep taking time, right?
Yeah.
So I'm learning that this year. Right? It's you know what? You told me the same thing 3 years ago. There's no reason for this to still be stuck, right? So you have to take some of that sort of bank in regard to how you've treated people and how you've been patient, and cash it in on some sort of action.
So let's back up a little bit and give our listeners a little background on your role as a council member, and then also what made you want to become a council member.
Sure. Well, Nashville, the greatest city in the country, is growing, and as with any growing pains, there's always conflict in how it grows and where it grows, and pace it grows. Metro Council in Nashville is one of only two very large metropolitan government entities. There are 40 members of the Metro Council of Nashville, and they're grab the pearls.
Yeah.
The 40 members consist of 5 at-large members whose job it is to be watchful on countywide issues. The other 35 are district council members. They're divided by population. So as we see the new census numbers, district lines move a bit. So every 10 years you see some adjustments in how those 35 districts are created. But at this time, since the 2021, after the 2010 census, about 20,000 people live in each of the 35 districts. So I, as district council member representing District 8, represent about 20,000 people. That's not 20,000 voters, and that's not 20,000 homeowners. That's 20,000 souls, right? So if you were on the census at that time, that's where that number came from. So we divide those districts based on some community feedback, but primarily upon the wisdom of the Metro Planning Department. And they will create those districts sometimes based on major corridors or rivers or something that kind of makes sense on a map, but not necessarily based on neighborhood. And so you'll have, the good news is by doing so, you have more than one representative in any particular part of a suburb or a city, parts of town, because you may have people that are on both sides of the road, if you will. But at the same time, it does kind of divide sometimes if you're not all on the same page. So the good news is my freshman term, and you can have 2 in Nashville, so I find myself in the middle of an 8-year plan. The first year I was new and I was surrounded by incumbents, and so I had the opportunity to be able to learn from folks that were in their second term. I now find, now that I'm in my second term, that same obligation is now forwarded on.
Now you're passing that on.
Yeah, so all contiguous county districts to 8 are all brand new people. So I've been spending this kind of first season of the first year just trying to make sure that we all know each other and kind of finding out if we're all on the same page. And the good news is for all the neighborhoods is that we all seem to agree on major issues as it relates to zoning and applications and how to protect suburban core and build on the corridors, and that's types of basic things that we all agree on. There's a gentleman that's a previous council member in the area that now works for a school. I ran into him at an event, and he said, you know, when I was council member, I was there when they let us do 3 terms. So he was there for 12 years, and over the course of all 12 years, he had 5 zoning bills.
Wow. That's like what you have in a week.
In a week, yeah. So a Metro Council member in Nashville in the 2000s is different than any previous decade, and as we enter the new decade, we see that that's even growing some more, trying to make sure that we're controlling under the Nashville Next plan, which is an award-winning plan with community impact that always has updates to it every year. If we can stick with that, then that puts us all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. We'll be okay.
Yeah, and like you said, you're almost like a guardian, a representative of those 20,000 souls.
Yeah.
Helping them make sure that, you know, it's whether it's the new library that we're in right now, helping getting funding for that, helping develop out new amenities, helping businesses come to town,
that's right,
helping provide affordable housing, like what we worked on. So really, you get to help shape and guide the community.
Yes, and you learn more and more what a team effort it is and how important it is to be always forward thinking, because even this library, for example, it's a $2.8 million public investment to upgrade this library, but it took 3 council members and 4 mayors.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So how do you, with so many things going on in council and so many different people, 40 council members, you have the mayor's agenda, and how do you balance all that with your priorities and setting your priorities for your 4-year term?
That is a great question. I think the thing that I've been able to survive with, and it's weird because I think all 40 council members all work 40 different ways. So you could ask anybody, they do it differently. Some may be retired and can work on this all day long. Some maybe don't even use their email and never respond to anybody, but still get stuff done. I don't know how, but you know, so people were independently elected. We do not have staff that are assigned directly to us. There is a staff at the council office, but primarily it's to execute legislation, not for office support. That means that you have to manage your time to act like an entrepreneur. You have to act like you're self-employed. This is a job you have. You have to get up, you have to do it. You have to figure out how to manage your time, set priorities, and be true to them.
So, and you brought up a good point, like you're basically doing two full-time jobs.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the actual business side, and how that's been able to how those two have been able to work together.
Well, Batch is a startup that's 7 years old. So I think it's about maybe $2 million company at this point. It was started by 3 friends that saw a need. I had worked with them on other projects. In fact, I've known them for over a decade. In 2010, during the floods in Nashville, they created a shirt that had the "We Are Nashville" slogan on it, which became the rallying cry for flood relief assistance. They sold over $100,000 worth of T-shirts in a very short period of time to help with flood relief, and we had even 2 years before that, in 2008, I wrote a book on social media strategies for arts and worked with them on that. So I had known them for a long time. They had started this company called Batch, this premium gift company, and they saw that I was struggling a little bit with time just to figure out how to do 2 jobs, and were willing to allow me to be flexible with my time, and ended up joining their crew during the holidays of 2016. So I guess I've been with them for about 3.5 years in growing their business. Batch is a bit of a 3-legged stool. We have the online at batchusa.com where you can buy gifts and ship them wherever. We ship around the world all the time. Everybody wants Nashville in a box, so that's good. I think having been self-employed for so long, even though I spent 9 years in the corporate world, and even in my work in nonprofits, it felt entrepreneurial focused, very self-starter kind of thing. Gave me the skill set to be able to get the work done and still find a life in the in-between.
So I want to say I commend you for all the work you're doing with the community and the city of Nashville and Madison and Englewood, the communities that you represent. One thing that overarching is I just want to know, like, where do you get this drive, and like what pushes you every day? What helps you get over the days that you're just like, man, I do not want to get out of bed right now, or what actually gets you up and gets you going?
Well, I want to participate in being part of any solution. Brene Brown, I don't know, I had to say, you're going to evoke her name, then you have to do that. But Brene quoted Roosevelt in her last speech, the idea of being in the arena, this concept of not being satisfied with watching what's happening, but actually doing the work that needs to happen. I've turned that around to challenge my community with that. I feel somewhat responsible as an early evangelist of social media technologies for the pit that it's fallen into. It's too easy for people to complain and not participate in the solution. And so one of the things that I'm most hopeful about is building more neighborhood associations, getting people to see each other eye to eye, to solve the problem, quit complaining about the litter, put a team together and go pick it up. I mean, right? And I think that drives me, putting the power back into the hands of the neighborhoods. By very nature of my district has been known to be suburban, even though it's surrounded by major corridors. Most of the people live on large lots and don't know their neighbors. And a lot of the people that, myself included, that moved here in the 90s up here in Madison did so in order to be left alone. And I think getting neighborhoods talking to each other again face to face, and kind of returning to more of an analog solution, I think is something that really drives me, because I do feel somewhat responsible, having written books on social and how to do all the weird things that we do on social media. I've actually even left Facebook as an individual. We still manage the district page, but I'm not in any of the groups. I'm not going to answer crazy threads on groups. It's like, send me an email. It's a matter of public. It's usually tell somebody, send it to my .gov email, and then it'll be public record, and I'm held accountable. Sometimes they just don't even do it because they're like, well, I don't want to go on record. It's like, you're on the internet. How's that not on the record?
Yeah, that's
so
very
it's like,
People
how do you, if you really want to do something, let me help you find the tools to do that. So we took some campaign money and created a scholarship at the nonprofit Neighbor to Neighbor that helps neighborhood organizations start and gives them the tools and training to do well. And so some of the programs that they have are $5 or $10 to go to a class, right? It's like, well, if it's just that stopping you, then evoke the scholarship and get it to happen. So we've now have 3 new neighborhood groups out of Madison and 2 in Maplewood and Inglewood. So 5 new neighborhood associations have started in the last year. And the good news is that's happening and people are involved. The bad news is, oh my gosh, people are involved. And they all are having meetings and I have to go to them. So now my calendar's filled back up. So it's a dance.
So added work, but you're getting the impact and the results that you're truly desiring.
You need people involved. The 2 council members before me didn't do newsletters, had very few community meetings. So it took the first term just to get people to realize that they can find me. They do have a voice. I am listening. So now if we can turn that, because within the next 3 years, we have to figure out who's next, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll bubble up out of one of these groups.
That's phenomenal. I love the kind of the reason, the whole genesis behind, why you're doing what you're doing. And also what's motivating you, what's getting you going is, it's actually putting a voice back to the people and actually giving people an opportunity to make a difference instead of just complaining about no difference being made.
Right.
So
let's do that.
Yeah, let's do it. So, and I've told you this before, but I want our listeners to hear that I always commend you. I very much commend you for your transparency, your communication, your leadership as a council member, because I've dealt with lots of council members in our affordable housing development, workforce housing development, and it's not easy when your council member is not as much of a leader or seen as a leader or perceived as a leader, and also takes a stand on important issues and also takes the time to go out and communicate and create rapport with their constituents. So I commend you for that first off, and then I would say, what advice would you have for being able to do that in another district per se?
Well, we all bring to any job biases. We all bring to jobs our own circles of influence. What's difficult is to kind of reach out beyond that, right? So I've been trying to learn more and more from our African American communities. There's some friends of mine that are been instrumental in helping me understand where I need to be. You can't keep asking folks to just come where you are. You need to go where they are. And so I think that whether it's race or an ethnicity or language or economic situations, it's easy to put each other into different buckets and be satisfied when people who look like us or have the same background of us are responding to you, when that's a very small portion of who you actually are supposed to be representing. And so I'm addressing that first with the African American community, but also even just with regional differences. My district is almost really two different districts, right? It's like the more urban areas of North Englewood and Maplewood have completely different neighborhood needs than those in the Madison suburbs. But getting them to talk to each other, I think, is going to be vital so that we can all learn that hey, we're in the same district. We should be helping each other with different things. I'm hoping that with these new neighborhood organizations, as well as 4 or 5 that were already started when I came along, to have some sort of District 8 leadership summit in the spring to where all these neighborhoods get to know each other. And I think that that's going to be pretty interesting to do, and I would challenge other council members to not get too comfortable feeling kind of believing their own press release. You know, it's just like there's so many people out there that don't know who the heck you are or that they have a voice too, and so you're not done until you figure that out. And I think that some of the new affordable housing conversations that we're having are helping a lot with that, and helping folks know that if they, they bought their house in the 90s there in Madison, that their mortgage payment is like 50% of what it would cost for an affordable apartment right now.
Yeah.
Is like kind of, oh, okay, never mind. So I think that there's some of that economic conversation that you need to have. So,
speaking of affordable housing, I did want to ask, how have you found affordable housing and I guess new development in general? How have you found success communicating sometimes the need for that opportunity of affordable workforce housing in a community when maybe a community really just thinks they don't need it?
Well, in the first term, we've been able to identify 34% of all new housing approved was workforce and affordable. And I think that the idea of balance and in building mixed income neighborhoods has been the win.
Yeah.
So that you're not going backwards and creating communities that somehow feel other, but are part of the whole. And so whether it be in an area that we know around the Nosy College of Art and creating, 5 or 6 different housing types, ranging from affordable and workforce all the way to condos with rooftop decks. I mean, all within walking distance. Then that works.
Yeah.
Right. Over on Williams Avenue, we're having the same thing where we've got market rate, beautiful townhomes going in, along with a cottage development across the road from a project that was done by the Metropolitan Department of Housing with homeless veterans called Patriot Place. And so they're placing homeless vets into housing across the street from a house that cost $400,000. I mean, so you're building mixed income, income communities means mixed background communities, means mixed, the children will be playing together, all of that vision, I think, makes it more palatable. So if you're just putting a whole lot of that affordable housing apartment thing that people get all scared about, if you concentrate it too heavily, then people do get concerned that it feeds into the otherness concept. One of the projects that's happening in a neighboring district here, when I was talking to some folks that live within about half a mile from it that are really worried that some affordable apartments are going to have their property values go down, which we know the statistics aren't true, but reality is perception, right? It's like, well, we're going to balance that with $500,000 homes like down the street from you. Oh, okay, never mind, right? So it's like you have to balance, and you have to be able to kind of, whenever possible, particularly if it's infill and you have that possibility, because it's open land. What are you going to do with it? Then the council member does have some influence over how to build a mixed income community, and so I've been fortunate to have dirt to do that with, right?
And I think you're exactly right. Like and I love how you worded that. It's like basically taking it not just affordable, but how can we look at the bigger picture and say, how can we have a mixed income community and provide for all income levels, all living in the same area?
Yeah.
And that helps it be more palatable too for the perception of the community.
Right, and and here in Nashville, and everyone's worked really hard at phrases and what terms mean, and it's like the legal definition of, and the failed attempt for folks to use the word attainable housing. It's like, what does that mean? Okay, if you qualify their mortgage, it's attainable. I guess I don't know, but. Workforce, affordable, these terms are everyday terms to us, but they're not to most people. They don't understand what that means. And so actually giving dollar amounts, like in today's market, the 2-bedroom apartment would go for $1,100. You can call that workforce, or you can say $1,100, and they're like, oh, that's pretty good. I can't find one for less than $1,800. I want one of those. Quit calling it stuff. Just say what it is, right? Quit trying so hard to use terminology. So, so I think that it's just the practicality of it and the explanation of how to make a place.
I think you're exactly right. I think it's the marketing of a community is you shouldn't label it if that label already has negative connotations around it in people's heads. So what other way can you brand it? And you're right, if you just say, hey, here's one amenity of it, which is its price point, then then people are like, hey, I could use that.
There's those apartments over there by Skyline Commons that look beautiful, and you're like, oh my gosh, those are gonna be great. And they say affordable apartments coming. It's like, why didn't they just say $900 1-bedroom apartments available soon? I mean, it's like, that would have. That's just a marketing. Like, why don't you totally just lose those terms?
That's a great point. I love it. I'm learning things today.
It's like you gotta. It's like if you just dropped into a city because you've heard it's a cool place to live. You've got a roommate so you can split the rent, but or you just got married and you want to okay, we're going to save some money for a down payment. Where can we live that we can afford? Those are like real words, right? Not, where can we find a market rate apartment? It's like, where can we find a place that is 1/3 of our income? Like, stop it. Just tell me how much you have to spend and we'll find you a place. Right? Anyway.
So going into 2020, what has been, have you done goal setting behind this year, or do you have a vision for this year?
I do have a secret.
Uh-oh.
No, I have a secret agenda. No, I have my own 5-year plan that I'm still working on. So film at 11, just Nancy's plan. For the district, a lot of it has to do with making sure that what we started is underway before I leave, and that we find who's next. That really, I've seen really great momentum completely squandered if you're not thinking about it, right? So there's a couple of people I think that I would like to convince to maybe follow, but I don't know. I probably haven't even met the person that's going to do that. You know? So I think that the sooner you can think about that, the better. So that they're engaged in what's happening now. There are some long-term opportunities, particularly in the Madison portion of my district, that have to do with longer range plans, way longer range plans. Like if we do get Amtrak to come to Nashville, will they travel to Madison Station? You know, what does that do to this plan? A transit-oriented development for a bus line, it becomes an opportunity for trains 30, 40 years from now. Then how are you thinking about that now so that it's able to absorb that opportunity? So those are, you know, long-term plans. The historic preservation, not only of places and things, but of memory, is important for me in the next 4 years or so, particularly the musical heritage of this area and making sure that it's properly documented and celebrated. Some of that has to do with a lot of naming of things. And I get teased on the Metro Council because I keep changing names of roads, and I'm a huge person when it comes to placemaking. So being mindful of any opportunity to kind of celebrate our history with each new development is something that I'm going to be pretty passionate about. So.
Yeah, that's what we did on our development at Buffalo Trail,
that's right.
Naming it after, you know, the trail of the buffaloes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was where the buffalo ran through they ran all the way from there to the Cumberland River, about, what would it be, 7 miles away?
Yeah.
And can you imagine back in the day? So, and that topsoil at Buffalo Trail, there was enough cows that ran through there. You can tell it's like an amazing amount of beautiful red and black topsoil that was just like, wow, you guys. Yeah,
they're doing work on that site, 240 units.
Well, you know, that was a good example too. I was talking with someone the other day when you say 240 or even if you say 400 units, they're like, they don't get that. And
right.
You go to a community meeting and you have this piece of paper or a thing that's just two-dimensional. It's just a thing with boxes on it and little green dots where there's supposed to be trees. Nobody, if I can challenge anybody, the technology is there now. 3D renderings from the street will win the day every time. Show me what this is going to look like when I drive by.
Yeah.
Actually show it to me. When you say 3 stories, what does that look like? How are you going to, where are you going to put these things, and how is it not going to look really horrible, right? So the architecture involved in that, I think that would immediately win the day for people, and that used to be, a $10,000 or $20,000 problem, but you can do that now. I mean, they can do that.
Yeah,
now.
We've done that.
Yeah, you can do that now,
projects,
right?
Yeah.
And even the drone. I mean, I think that now that it's cleared and the work is going on Buffalo Trail, when people drive by, they go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know it went back that far. Now I understand how all that's going to fit."
Yeah.
Well, there's no way you could have seen that whenever we were actually talking about it,
yeah.
right? So I think that whenever you're talking about a large development with lots of buildings, you need to be able to see it from the street and see it from the air in order for people to really have a concept of its place.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there should be more invested on that front end.
Yeah.
To actually show people, and also, like you said, I mean, that also helps people get more comfortable.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay, I can see it, I can feel it, I can understand it. And
well, it's the same. I would assume, and I've not been in real estate directly, but I would assume whenever you're looking for investors, they need to understand what it looks like too. So it's a win-win to be able to have that kind of material to say this is what this is going to look like. I mean, you get jazzed about actually being able to see it when your renderings are actually those elevations look real and not just conceptual. Then that could really be awesome.
Well, I feel like we could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But let's jump into our monumental questions.
Oh, I have my cheat sheet for my books. Go ahead.
What does success mean to you?
Success is achieving recognition of opportunity. Anytime that I see that there's opportunity that can be acted on, I consider that a success. Whether it's achieved, that opportunity is achieved, or that potential is eventually realized, it's in the acquisition of the opportunity that I think is important.
I really like that. That's a unique answer. I love it.
It is. I just came up with it.
Beautiful. What about daily habits or morning rituals?
I sleep as long as possible. I have tried really hard to not do that whole grab your phone when you get up thing, but I've learned that no matter what time I set my alarm clock for, it's whenever the dog wakes up is basically when I get up. She shakes real hard and her chain wiggles, and that's my alarm. It's crazy. So once I let Chance, the Wonder Dog, out, I try to check news first. I listen to the podcast from NPR called Up First. It's called Up First. It's a little tiny podcast. It's like 12 minutes. And it's the highlights from the morning edition, basically. But those 12 minutes while I'm getting ready that I listen to kind of helps me feel like I understand what's going on in the world in general, because I get hyper-focused by neighborhood pretty fast. And so I listen to Up First when I get up first. So that's definitely part of my routine. I like coffee. Certain times of the year it's cold brew, and sometimes of the year it's espresso, but there's always some sort of caffeine involved at the beginning of my day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what about favorite book or book you're currently reading?
That's what I had my cheat sheet on, because I'm asking everybody to absorb a couple of different books that I've been able to enjoy. I'm grabbing my phone for those of you who are not watching and listening instead. The Audible app from Amazon, and I know you can get a lot of these books also through the Nashville Public Library, so I will plug that as well. But in my library are a couple of books that I've listened to more than once, right? That I return back to. The Lead from the Outside by Stacey Abrams. Oh my gosh, what a fantastic book. I mean, just
The Lead from the Outside.
Yeah, Lead from the Outside. And then Abby Wambach did the Wolfpack project, and it is a conversation that she has, and both of these women are reading their own books, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
She was the soccer star.
Right, with the U.S. Women's.
Yeah, she was asked to do a speech at a commencement ceremony, and by doing that speech, she realized that more people needed to hear the message. So Wolfpack and Stacey Abrams would be my first two go-tos.
I love it.
I love listening to books because it's so hard to find time to sit down and actually hold paper. If I have that kind of time, usually I'm painting instead, or doodling or whatnotting, or watching Netflix or something mindless. But I listen to a lot of books on tape, some narrative, but I really like when the author's reading their own books.
Yeah, I agree.
And I kind of go towards those. So,
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time and really diving into your story, telling us a little bit about, your background, and then also your whole path and why you do what you do, your mission, and really shed some light on everything that you've been able to accomplish because of your mission, because of your why, and how you are able to keep going every day. So I think our listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this. I appreciate you for that.
I appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you. I listen to the podcast, and I know enough to know that this is a very unique version of it. And so I'm happy to be here. If anybody listening has ever thought about running for office, you have one choice to make. You either run or you find someone you would vote for and help them win.
Yes, I love that. That's a good call to action, everybody. So speaking of which, how can our Monumental listeners either reach out to you or follow you?
The website for the district activities is NVR4, that's the number 4, district8.com. And when you pop up there, there'll be a little pop-up window to sign up for newsletters. You get monthly updates on what we're doing in the district, and all the contact information is there. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it on social media. Nancy's very active on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. She does a very good job on social media. So make sure to tag her, tag myself. Let us know you're listening. Let us know what part you enjoyed most. And also, do not forget, leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. Let us know you're listening to Monumental. And with that, have a monumental day.